Priscilla, bonjour Jagdish.
Bonjour Caroline.
Bonjour Caroline, Priscilla, bonjour également, auditeurs et internautes, bonjour.
Bonjour Jagdish, bonjour à tous. Alors merci ou rejoindre nous pour la séance de la PNQ de ce mardi. À mes côtés, donc Jagdish Joypal. C'est le projet de construction de 12 000 logements qui est au cœur de la PNQ du leader de l'opposition ce matin, Xavier Duval, qui questionne Premier ministre adjoint et ministre du Logement et des Terres, Steven Obigadou. L'IP demande s'il est capable de gagner l'information depuis National Social Living Development Limited. Le coût total, ce projet-là, maintenant que l'appel d'offres fin lancé. Xavier Duval peut demander aussi à Steven Obigadou qui subvention peut proposer pour ban ménage, mais aussi comment pour financer ce projet-là, Jagdish.
Oui, certainement, Priscilla, c'est un projet très ambitieux du gouvernement, étalé aux 2 ans, qui est besoin réaliser d'ici 2024 dans 20 circonscriptions. Donc, il concerne construction 12 000 logements. L'appel d'offres est déjà lancé. Alors, surtout, les travaux finissent démarrer l'ONSIT pour la construction de 3 746 la case, donc les 12 sites qui sont identifiés, construction, premier projet démarré à Coromandel, pour finir la design, pose de la première pierre et travaux en cours. Les premiers sites identifiés, La Rosa, Mort d'Albert, Grand Bel-Air, La Clémence, Coromandel justement qui nous mentionnait, Notre-Dame, Taillac, Souillac, Bambou, Hermitage. À Hermitage, il y a 2 sites qui sont identifiés et Bossons. Alors projet, 12 000 logements, le coût l'inestimé au départ à 12 milliards de roupies et un budget déjà alloué par le ministre des Finances dans le dernier budget concernant ce projet. Alors là, démarrage à Coromandel, c'est pour la construction de 900 maisons, 900 la case d'une première étape et annonce une faire au cours de différentes cérémonies de présentation du projet, qu'il est 50 sites de construction pour faire. En principe, il mentionne 50, dans certains cas 52 sites de construction pour faire. Ça, site-là est déjà identifié, mais quand même, c'est une course contre la montre dans le sens que difficile après une étude topographique, étude du sol, puis trouver qui est dans certains sites quand même représente certaines difficultés pour aller de l'avant. Et là, avec le ministre du Logement, qui est le député Prime Minister, le Premier ministre adjoint, Steven Obigadou, Xavier Duval, pour l'ensemble du projet qui peut faire à la continuité et qui va en difficulté, surtout peut gagner. Maintenant, Priscilla, il y a une question concernant la main-d'œuvre. Il y a déjà 6 000 travailleurs étrangers engagés dans la construction. Et le ministre du Commerce, Sud-Est-Calichen, il a annoncé qu'il a besoin de trouver une main-d'œuvre additionnelle parce qu'il est sous ce ministère pour donner un work permit. Donc, une main-d'œuvre additionnelle pour aller de l'avant, pour capable, donc, réaliser le projet de construction séparément des 6 000 engagés déjà dans la construction et sans doute certains des engagés et retenir, ce service retenir dans le projet de métro express. Ensuite, présentation du projet. Au cours de présentation du projet, Steven Obigadou a déjà dit qu'il y a environ 30 000 familles donc, qui peuvent attendre, qui ont la liste d'attente au niveau du ministère du Logement pour la case, donc ce qu'on appelle un logement social. Et ça 12 000 là, il fait partie de sa projet de logement social donc initié, qui finit donc concevoir par le gouvernement.
Elle nous rappelle aussi donc que le Premier ministre préside une task force donc ce projet-là. Et puis il y a 35 000 dimoun qui finissent inscrits auprès de la NHDC pour gagner la case. Il y a sans doute un processus de ciblage. Tout à l'heure, nous pouvons gagner un détail avec Steven Obigadou. Et puis, Jagdish, retour de une question adressée donc au Premier ministre et au ministre à l'Assemblée nationale ce mardi. Les 3 dernières semaines, une séance parlementaire fin de faire jeudi. Et pour cette reprise, il y a au moins 20 questions qui adressées à Premier ministre, parmi l'affaire Angus Road et l'affaire Kisnen, perquisition au domicile de la compagne d'Akil Bissessor et l'élection municipale, une question de Deven Nagalingam, si nous arrive jusque-là.
Oui, en effet, retour aux questions, d'abord aux interpellations qui est adressée au Premier ministre d'un premier temps. Donc là, après la private notice question de Xavier Duval qui posait à Stephen Obigadou, une fois les 30 minutes allouées en réponse à cette question-là, donc c'est le Premier ministre qui pour besoin répondre à une vingtaine de questions qui finissent inscrire à l'ordre du jour, mais généralement, chaque mardi, à peine 2 ou 3 questions parce qu'en 30 minutes, le temps est épuisé. Oui, c'est vrai, en 3 jeudis, pas fini là. Question parce que normalement, quand une séance Parlement tenir un autre jour qui est mardi, ça peut être vendredi, jeudi, donc à ce moment, pénal interpellation. Un député adressé également, une question adressée au Premier ministre. Donc, c'est seulement réservé les mardis, comme c'est le cas aujourd'hui. Alors, donc, 78 questions à l'ordre du jour et également, donc, questions concernant les élections municipales. Comment dire, Priscilla, si nous arrivons jusque-là avec autant de questions à l'ordre du jour et jamais à aucune séance nous arrivée complète l'exercice de questions adressées au Premier ministre, quoi qu'il, pour les ministres, au moins, nous gagnons un maximum de réponses.
Et puis, il y a aussi donc, un débat au Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill et le Malicious Standard Amendment Bill. Nous pouvons tout de suite en direction de l'Assemblée nationale.
Announcement, none. Papers have been laid. Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, my question is addressed to the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Housing and Land Use Planning, Minister of Tourism, whether in regard to the proposed construction of 12,000 residential units, he will, for the benefit of the House, obtain from the National Social Living Development Limited information as to A, the estimated total project cost now that bids have been opened, B, the proposed subsidy to be given to households, and C, how the project will be financed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, allow me to bid good morning to the Leader of the Opposition and thank him for this rare opportunity to provide information to members of the House concerning the mega social housing project, unprecedented, initiated by the Prime Minister and our government 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, the question relates to the project for construction of 12,000 residential housing units in response to growing demand. The House will recall, Mr. Speaker, that in his budget speech in the year 2020, in June 2020, the Minister of Finance announced an exceptional effort of government to build 12,000 residential units for families with a monthly income of up to 60,000 rupees. So there was a revision of the ceiling for entitlement to social housing announced by the Minister of Finance. And this was on top of the normal housing construction project of the NHDC. Now, to meet the needs of the most vulnerable families, as well as middle-income families, government announced that for families earning monthly income of up to 10,000 rupees, government would build 1,800 housing units and subsidize 80% of the cost. For families earning monthly income between 10,000 and 30,000 rupees, government would build 5,200 housing units and subsidize 67% of the cost. And for families earning monthly income between 30,000 and 45,000 rupees, government would build 3,500 housing units and subsidize 40% of the cost. And finally, for families having monthly income between ranging from 45,000 to 60,000 rupees per month, government would build 1,500 housing units and would subsidize some 30% of the cost. So these were the, in response to part B of the question, the proposed subsidy already announced in the budget speech of June 2020. Now, following the budget speech and after appropriate consultations, it was proposed that the new Social Living Development Limited, NSLD, would be the implementing agency for the construction. And it will be recalled that the NSLD was incorporated as a wholly owned company of the NHDC as an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. From July to October 2020, my ministry, together with the NHDC and the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development, worked on a project proposal whereby we would have 18 to 28 arpents of land in each constituency, excluding Rodrigue, for the construction of some 600 residential units per constituency. The sites would have to be easily accessible, high-rise building given the scarcity of land, high-rise as far as possible if the nature of the soil allows, and there would be enhanced on-site social amenities. There would be a new ecological dimension, green construction, in terms of rainwater harvesting, energy generation, energy efficiency, and waste disposal, and access to social services within the community. As from 2020, my ministry, in collaboration with the NSLD, began the complex exercise of identifying land that would be both suitable and buildable. I would pray the Leader of the Opposition to bear with me. I need to provide the information so that he is fully aware and understands our response, my response concerning project cost. Now, where it has been possible, we've given priority to state land or land vested in state-owned companies to diminish the pressure on public finance. And where it has not been possible to secure such land, the NSLD has had either to buy or to compulsorily acquire private land. And this exercise is still ongoing. From November 2020 to January 2021, the NSLD prepared the request for proposals, RFP, for the project management consultants, PMCCs. In July 2021, the RFP for the PMCCs was launched, and then we were hit by COVID in March 2021. Despite that, from April to July 2021, the bids for PMCCs were evaluated, and out of 10 bids, only 3 were technically and financially responsive. In August 21, the procurement exercise had to be cancelled, and a new reformulated RFP launched, and which eventually meant that between November 2021 and early 2022, 8 PMCCs, project management consultants, were appointed. As from December 2021, we began the geotechnical investigations by geotechnical consultant firms appointed by the PMCCs following relevant procurement procedures. This was done on identified sites, which is still continuing until now as a function of site identification and availability of these geotechnical consultancy firms. As from April of this year onwards, the NSLD with its PMCCs prepared concept designs, architectural drawings, detailed structural designs, and thereafter preparation of tender documents in respect of construction. As from August of this year, bids were launched in batches for construction. In September, the initial bids were opened, 5 out of a total of some 62. This may vary. And what was noted was that the figures submitted went beyond the 30% increase in construction costs as per Statistics Mauritius. So this has obviously significant implications, both for the total project cost and eventually the eventual selling price of these units. So we did three things with the approval of government. First, the NSLD reviewed its specifications for the housing units to align strictly with NHDC specifications, because they had tried as a first step to offer more comfortable surroundings, even more comfortable. So we've now aligned strictly with NHDC. Secondly, the contractual conditions were reviewed to ensure that there was an increased response from eventual bidders, building in more flexibility. And thirdly, therefore, accordingly, the bids that had already been closed and the bids that had in the meantime been launched had to be cancelled to allow for a relaunching of the call for bids, the call for tenders, on the basis of modified tender documents. Now we expect this exercise, the new launching of bids, to begin right now, this week, and proceed by phases thereafter. So all in all, this project of unprecedented magnitude has been severely hampered by COVID restrictions over 20 months, including 2 lockdowns, that entailed inevitable and significant delays. The major constraints have been unavailability of land, unsuitability of some sites identified, the limited number of available geotechnical contractors and equipment, and the limited absorptive capacity of the construction industry as a whole. Now, to respond directly to part A of the question, now that I've laid the background, the Leader of the Opposition will recall that in the budget speech of June 2020, my colleague, the Minister of Finance, announced that 12 billion had been earmarked by government for the construction of 12,000 housing units. He also announced that the household income eligibility ceiling was being raised to 60,000 rupees maximum, and he gave the details of the subsidy component, which I read out earlier. Thereafter, I remember there was a parliamentary question from Honourable David, and I had the opportunity to explain that the whole construction cost would not be 12 billion. 12 billion was what government was putting in. Then we would have to privately raise the balance, and which would be repaid when the houses are sold. Now, when the RFP was launched for PMCCs, the construction cost per house was mentioned as per the construction cost then of NHDC houses, between 1.5 to 1.9 million. The opening of bids, as I explained, have shown that the construction costs have increased by more than 30%, and so we have brought a number of amendments to our bids. So the final project work, the final project cost, let me also explain that we are now excluding a number of sites where the infrastructural works, substructure, earthworks, are costing abnormally high represent abnormally high cost. So the final project cost will be determined, can only be determined when we receive the new bids, and that will depend, at the time the bids come in, on revised construction sites, revised construction specification, contractual amendments, and evolution of construction costs. As we know, we have a lot of imported inflation there. The subsidy has already been announced in June 2020, and that formula is being maintained for the time being, subject, of course, to amendments that may be brought in the light of the total financial costs. As for the financing of the project, I have already explained that the balance of the 12 billion will be privately raised. I hope I have provided the information the Leader of the Opposition was seeking.
Thank you, Mr. I think it is, after looking at the file, unprecedented amateurism. But I will come to that in a moment. Mr. Speaker, the Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, the government have promised on repeated occasions that they would supply to the public, long-waiting public, 12,000 houses by 2024 at a cost to the purchaser of 7 700,000 rupees. Now, I want firstly to ask the Deputy Prime Minister,
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
at the cost of, you missed an important one, at the cost of 700,000 rupees. Remember you said that yourself in July. I can circulate if your memory has played with you at this stage. You said 12,000 houses, March 2024, 700,000 rupees to the purchaser. Are you maintaining this promise that you made? You also made the promise that it would be quality housing. Are you maintaining the four prongs of your promise to the people of Mauritius? That's my first question. Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, the...
Maybe. No. What
sorry.
is it?
I'll
Yes or no?
When you finish the answer.
Ah, c'est fait, yes or no?
Mon pas faire this. I go by parliamentary tradition. When you speak, I don't interrupt. Once you've finished, I wait until you've finished and then I'll answer. Right. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Gentleman speaks of unprecedented amateurism. Now, I would like to point out that, let's forget the NSLD. Just for the NHDC, we have already delivered, since the last elections, some 2,200 houses. That is more than the Labour Party and PMST delivered between the whole period of 2006 to 2014 in terms of houses built and nearly the amount in terms of houses delivered. So, speaking of amateurism, Mr. Speaker, let me again say, this is unprecedented. It shows the commitment of government as the first major social project announced in June 2020, and despite COVID, despite the worst recession this country has known in its economic history, government has maintained its objective, and my colleague, the Minister of Finance, has reaffirmed this commitment in June 2021 and in June 2022. So yes, Mr. Speaker, we have only one word. That is a sacred commitment taken. We will build the 12,000 houses for the people of Mauritius. Now, as regards the issue of unit cost, I have never stated that at whatever date the 12,000 units will be ready, whatever the size, whatever the location, it will be 700,000 rupees. What I have had the opportunity of stating in this House is the actual cost of NHDC houses, how much subsidy government brings in, and what is the balance that is to be repaid by prospective buyers, and government has extended the repayment period to 35 years now. So if the Honourable Gentleman wants to lay on the table of the House an answer I gave here, I am quite willing to comment thereupon.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly will lay a copy of a rendition of his speech on 11th June 2020, and we can do simple subtraction, we're not that stupid. And he says, le DPM a souligné que le coût pour la construction de chaque unité équivaut à 1,9 million de roupies, le gouvernement allouant un subside de 1,2 million de roupies sur chacune d'elles. We are not, Honorable Ratna is no longer here, so we can imagine, we can all calculate that it's going to be 700,000 rupees. But I don't want, I also tell...
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, if I may, on a point of order, the Leader of the Opposition has categorically stated that I communicated such information. The document being quoted from clearly is not answered. And it is therefore misleading the House to say that I would have stated here that all these houses would cost 700,000 rupees.
Oh, his misleading thing. He has, I'm surprised, since 2020, he has been talking about 600,000 rupees. You look stupid, Mr. Minister, in front of people, eh? You have talked about, and I will produce, since 2020 you've been producing that figure. So I understand now that the cost of 700,000 rupees per purchaser is no longer on the cards for you. Let the press will take up the rest, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister, Deputy Prime Minister. I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister. He has said he wants to be transparent as energy. And my problem is not with NHDC. I accept that they constructed some 2,000 houses on a waiting list of 35,000. So people will understand. Now, Mr. Speaker, why doesn't he tell us that the average cost per the tenders received, the 4 or 5 tenders that you have opened, that the average cost per house is something like 6 million rupees, including project management costs, etc., etc. 6 million rupees for a house that you were mentioning in June 2020 was supposed to cost 2022. A few months ago, you went all over the place to say that the cost would be, wait a minute, to cost would be, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Put your question.
I'm saying, wait a minute, would cost 1.9 million.
You're not putting your question. I disallow this question.
You have said everywhere that the cost would be 1.9 million rupees. Why don't you tell this House, since you have said that you are going to be transparent, what were the bids received and whether or not the bids were to the average value of 6 million rupees per unit per the design that you have yourself approved? That's my question. Is that all right, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the Leader of the Opposition who seems to be worried that I may look stupid. Let me assure him, at the end of this mandate, he will be judged on his words. We on this side of the House will be judged on our deeds. And we are confident that we will have deeds to show the public. I maintained that I have never stated that NSLD houses, when they will be built and delivered, and I can't say exactly when that will be, I hope that they will all be delivered in 2024. But I am no magician, and building houses throughout our history has never been child's play. Now, I have never mentioned 700,000. What I have stated when delivering NHDC houses in the past is that those units have cost 1.9 million, depending on which site where we delivered houses. We do not know, and I maintain, we do not know where global inflation is going. We do not know if there will be a recession in the Western countries. We do not know when the war in the Ukraine will end. We cannot foresee what imported inflation will be. Nobody, Mr. Speaker, and certainly not the Leader of the Opposition, can foresee what the final costs of construction will be. Now, I do not design houses, and I do not approve designs of houses. This is the responsibility of the NSLD. Government lays down broad policy directives. We are building high-rise as far as possible to make optimal use of the scarce land that we have and of the public funds that we have at our disposal. Now, when I have not also, Mr. Speaker, let me make that clear, looked at tender documents or looked at bids that have been submitted. If the Leader of the Opposition knows that in these bids, in all the bids, invariably, the price quoted is 6 million rupees, I do not know that. What I do know for a fact is that the price of these houses quoted in the first tender exercise, which has now been cancelled, was more than 30% the actual construction cost of NHDC houses. We are changing the specifications because we want all these 12,000 houses to be affordable. We are building for the poorer sections of the community and the middle classes. The litmus test of our endeavors will be the ability to build and deliver and sell at affordable prices. And this is a constant concern that I discuss regularly with the Prime Minister, my colleagues of government, and especially the Minister of Finance. We will do our utmost to make these houses affordable to those who are in need of housing.
Just perhaps advise.
Let me announce that the document tendered by the Leader of the Opposition have been declared unauthenticated, and I instruct the clerk to return those documents to the Leader of the Opposition.
As usual, thank you. I just want to say one thing to the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. First, he has not denied that the average cost of the house per the opening bids are 6 million. Secondly, is he aware that it is good practice for bids when they're opened to be published so that it is transparent? And therefore, I would ask the Deputy Prime Minister today to take the commitment that he would publish and table on the table of this House the list of all the open bids, the tenders that have been made by NSLD since he's saying September. Will he, in the name of transparency, table the list of the bids that have been received? Because that is standard practice. Transparency. Nothing to hide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, let me again make it clear. I have neither confirmed nor denied the figure of 6 million because I simply do not know. They may be 4 million, 5 million, 6, 7, 8, 9 million. I do not know. I do not open tenders. I do not verify tenders. What we do know, it was more than 30%, and therefore it was decided that we should start a new exercise because we need to ensure that these houses are affordable. I don't mind, the government doesn't mind a delay of 1, 2, 3, 4 months. What matters is that these houses are built and that they are affordable. And we will certainly go down in history as the government that managed to implement the largest social housing project in history. And I hope that my good friend, the Leader of the Opposition, will also go down in history as a Leader of the Opposition that supported this project and that did not question and criticize it. Now, so as regards procurement, Mr. Speaker, what I understand is that the NSLD as a special purpose vehicle does not fall under the purview of the Public Procurement Act. I think that is clear, and I explained it.
Wait. You wait, he's replying, you wait. You're in a parliamentary democracy.
Did I say shame when the Leader of the Opposition spoke? Did I utter a word? Ai-je eu un geste déplacé? I think we should be polite and courteous in this parliament. So I have nothing to hide, and I answered my good friend Honourable Osman when this matter was raised, explaining why we had created an SPV and what the SPV is. Nevertheless, I am informed that the board of the NSLD has improved the implementation of a procurement policy framework to be applied for the procurement of goods, works, consultancy services, and other services with the aim to ensure a transparent, efficient, fair, ethical process with good governance practices and equitable procurement process so as to achieve maximum value for public money. So the NSLD has adopted the open advertised bidding policy in the appointment of PMCCs and building constructors for the construction of housing units, and that is for everybody to see, and this month the bids will be going out again.
So my question again was, is the Deputy Prime Minister willing to table all the bids that have been opened so far in the name of transparency? And I should also warn the Deputy Prime Minister that since he's taken so long to answer, and I have a lot of questions, we will come back to the House as often as necessary to come to prove to the House and to the people at large that all these are unfortunately false promises being made to thousands and thousands of poor Mauritians in Mauritius. And that is the point. Now, tell us whether he will publish the bids that have been received so far.
Mr. Speaker, I do not know whether it is normal practice to publish bids. I am quite happy to go and inquire. If that has been the practice of the PMSD when it was in government, then we shall do so. If it was the practice of the PMSD, we shall do so. Now, we are being accused of making promises. The promises have yielded nearly 2,200 houses since the last elections, and we are building. Now, the Leader of the Opposition says that he will continue asking questions, let me tell him that my door is open. He can call on me at any time, and we will provide him with all the information so we can meet whether outside the House, and I shall be only too happy to answer any parliamentary question from the Leader of the Opposition or from any of my good friends on the other side of the House. We have absolutely nothing to hide. If I have noted that the Leader of the Opposition has not alluded to any impropriety whatsoever, and if he thinks there is any impropriety, I would invite him to come and say so in the House. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, whatever opponents may say, we will go on with our work and government will deliver on its commitments.
Purposely any impropriety. And if I hear, I will do so, certainly.
Thank you.
And I will look for it, but I have not seen any so far. I will ask the Honourable Minister now. He has experience. He's going to build 900 units of social housing in Coromandel on a high-rise basis. Is that right? Now, has he spoken to people? Does he understand what the concentration of such huge numbers of units in one area, what does that mean for the quality of life in that unit, in that development? Has he not considered experience overseas? High-rise units, 4 or 5 stories, 900 in one piece means what? 4,000 or 5,000 people on a small plot of land? Does he not consider that instead of quality, he's going to give even worse quality than the NHDC is doing at the moment, where they're constructing small developments on individual houses, on individual plots?
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his concern. Let me recall, Mr. Speaker, that we have organized at least 2 workshops to explain the design, the project, and everything we're doing. All the members on the other side of the House, not all, I think all those who'd asked PQs, who'd shown some interest in housing, were invited. 2 or 3 said they would. 1 hour before the workshop, they phoned to say they couldn't. So all these questions were openly debated, and I would have welcomed suggestions, constructive suggestions, from the opposition. And we still have an open mind. So instead of criticizing, if they have any constructive proposals, we are here to listen. Now, as regards Coromandel, let me explain what is happening in Coromandel. Firstly, for inhabitants of constituency number 20, this was the only plot of land available. We have several constituencies where there is no land available. In constituency number 20, we are building close to 600 houses on 28 arpents of land, 28 arpents for these houses. And as regards constituency number 1, where again we have very limited land available, we have some land in Pointe-aux-Sables, and that is all, we have allocated another 13 arpents at Coromandel for approximately 300 houses. The site at Coromandel is exceptional. We are building indeed 900 houses over a total of 13 plus 28. Ça fait 41. 41 arpents of land. The project is exceptional. The Leader of the Opposition has a point. We are, as far as possible, limiting housing project on any one site to 300, because we are very aware of what it means to settle a large number of families in terms of public transport, in terms of social amenities, and so on and so forth. In some places, that is not possible. And that is precisely one of the reasons why previous governments have not been able to build that many houses. So let me tell the opposition that if they have constructive proposals, we are again open to listen.
Deputy
Time
Prime
over.
Minister.
Let me announce that Prime Minister's question time. PQB 1081, 1087 have been withdrawn. Honourable Anquetil.
Et voilà donc pour cette PNQ de Xavier Duval, axée la construction 12 000 logements sociaux et adressé à ministre des Terres et du Logement Steven Obigadou. Xavier Duval qui type envie le coût total de sa projet-là et il finit aussi des mains à Steven Obigadou qui subvention peut proposer à ban ménage mais aussi comment pour finance sa projet-là. Alors Steven Obigadou fait une parle d'un méga projet donc qui fait annoncé il y a 2 ans, il fait une révine l'annonce budgétaire concernant subventions qui peut accorder donc ben famille qui touche jusqu'à 10 000 roupies, il rappelle peut gagner une subvention jusqu'à 80% de 10 000 à 30 000, ben revenu de 10 000 à 30 000 jusqu'à 67% de subvention, 30 000 à 40 000 donc 40% de subvention et ben qui gagne un revenu de 45 000 à 60 000, une subvention jusqu'à 30%. Alors Steven Obigadou finit aussi rappelle donc que c'est la NSLD qui peut implémente sa projet-là. Les fins faire état de ben difficultés qui fin gagner entre autres. D'abord les fins dire qui ça ben logement-là bien prend en considération ben aspect environnemental et social. Alors fin gagne ben difficulté entre autres en ce qui concerne ban terrain, l'achat de ban terrain.
C'est toute bonne difficulté.
Donc, entre autres, l'étude du sol qui finit faire. Alors, les dire qui finit ban compulsory acquisition qui est bien fait. Et puis, les dire qui le procurement exercise finit bien cancel. Donc, parmi ban raisons qui finit évoquées, c'est le coût de la construction. Et Steven Obigadou évoque entre autres les autres difficultés sur le plan international. Donc les cause aussi l'inflation, la crise, donc mais aussi la Covid-19. Et puis donc Steven Obigadou rappelle aussi qu'à l'annonce de ce projet au coût de 12 milliards de roupies par le ministre des Finances, il dit qu'il a annoncé que c'est la case là pour coûter entre 1,5 et 1,9 millions de roupies par unité de logement. L'idée qui le coût final du projet, donc pas pour capable dire pour le moment, et les fins soutenir aussi qui le coût le financement du moins pour soutenir aussi par le privé. Et Xavier Duval, Jagdish fin dire qui finit à l'époque d'amateurisme sans précédent, l'idée qui avant d'y annoncer que ça va la case là pour coûte 700 000 roupies, donc une unité de logement. Et Steven Obigadou dit qui jamais les pas fin dire ça. Steven Obigadou qui rappelle donc qui finit à 2700 logements qui finit délivrés. Il dit bien plus qui entre 2006 et 2014. Et le ministre Obigadou et Xavier Duval finissent accusent mutuellement de misleading. Et nous retenir aussi donc que Steven Obigadou il dit qu'il souhaitait qui la case là donc se terminer en 2024 mais à ce stade il n'a aucune visibilité de la situation et donc pour bien attendre il dit que le logement là pour capable coûte plus cher aussi Jagdish.
Steven Obigadou, il fait référence donc à la somme qu'Xavier Duval il mentionnait 700 000 roupies et il dit à aucun moment, mon Dieu, ici là avec justesse, à aucun moment il pas mentionne 700 000 roupies. Il dit, concernant ce projet de 12 000 logements, alors les mentions de 700 000 c'était la case qui National Housing Development Company NHDC peut construire. Alors pendant 2020-2021, et donc il n'est pas lié avec ce projet concernant le coût. Et pour lui, c'est-à-dire une unité de logement dans ce projet de 12 000, il coûte environ 1,9 million de roupies. Ça, il est annoncé et il reconnaît. Deuxième aspect, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, le coût de construction est augmenté. Alors, le Bureau des statistiques, il fait mention d'une augmentation dans la construction de coûts d'environ 30% et coûte plus cher. Et là, Xavier Duval, il mentionne un chiffre qui est la case d'après lui pour coûte 6 millions de roupies quand nous guettons un petit peu tout ça, les rouages qui est là, les difficultés qui entourent un tel projet. Et Stephen Obigadou, à aucun moment, a repousse sa chiffre de 6 millions de roupies là, mais seulement les dire, Xavier Duval, s'il y a au courant de ban bids qui finit offert, de ban tender qui finit lancé, qui finit ouvert, et en présence de ban documents, donc peut-être les mieux placés. Et là, Stephen Obigadou dit il pas ni l'appel d'offres, ni être associé avec ban prix, parce que ça, c'est une équipe technique. Et également, il y a sa question de procurement. Procurement dans le sens qui Xavier Duval a demandé dans quelles conditions, c'est-à-dire coût, et évaluer comment une compagnie peut désigner. Alors pour Stephen Obigadou, le National Social Living Development Limited, c'est un special vehicle, c'est-à-dire c'est une compagnie qui est créée, pareil comme ENA pour Metro Express, un special vehicle qui passe par les procédures normales de procurement et de tender. Alors, c'était notre propre système qu'ils ont établi, conditions par lesquelles ils besoin répondre, vous êtes capable d'accepter un appel d'offres. Et ensuite, il y a un autre aspect, c'est le côté esthétique, le côté difficulté peut-être qu'Xavier Duval a évoqué, concernant par exemple, l'exemple ici là, c'est la construction du projet logement à Coromandel. Il y a donc un grand nombre de maisons. Un
projet exceptionnel d'ailleurs mentionné par Stephen Obigadou.
Oui, c'est-à-dire le high-rise pour construire en hauteur. Et là, Xavier Duval dit pour une concentration d'un titre dans l'espace, alors une concentration de population, d'habitants, avec autant de logements et qui peut construire donc le high-rise. Et d'après Xavier Duval, il ne pas répondre aux besoins du pays. Mais Stephen Obigadou peut dire qu'il y a une norme écologique au niveau de l'environnement, au niveau de l'architecture, tout ça là, pour respecter. Et ça, c'est un projet qui est certainement dans l'intérêt de la population et les dire qui, pour environ sur 28 arpents, donc environ sur 41 arpents, pour 900 lacases, 900 unités de logement qui peut construire. Et les lance une boutade à Xavier Duval, ancien ministre dans le gouvernement, pour dire que le gouvernement Parti travailliste PMSD pas fini autant de construction de logements. On croit pour cela une mention de 2300.
De 2006 à 2014.
De 2006 à 2014, alors que depuis les dernières élections, certainement 2014 à 2022 aujourd'hui, finit à 2300 la case qui finit construire. Et tout tourne autour de la construction. Maintenant, les appels d'offres, finalement, un appel d'offres
qui est
relancé parce qu'avec le coût qui une compagnie proposait, seulement 3 fit retenir parce que la plupart sont bien rejetés. Parce que ça va une compagnie de construction là, je ne guette les dépenses additionnelles, comme on mentionné, avec la récession, avec Covid, avec augmentation de matériaux de construction, donc tout ça là est encore plus cher. Mega Social Project, oui, certainement, dans l'intérêt du pays, dans l'intérêt de la population, sans précédent, et qui Stephen Obigadou il peut mentionner, il y a encore une growing demand, c'est-à-dire la demande continue. Et moi, tu mentionnes 30 000, c'est 35 000. Moi, tu mentionnes où précis là, exactement, c'est sur la liste d'attente. Voilà le projet logement, donc, qui retenir l'attention parce que c'est un projet d'importance nationale et beaucoup de bénéficiaires qui sont sortis de la classe pauvre, de la classe
encore
moyenne.
En attente.
Encore et toujours en attente.
Et dans certaines circonscriptions, donc, côté une difficulté pour gagner un terrain aussi.
Oui, dans la circonscription, c'est-à-dire numéro 20, donc c'est là Coromandel concerné. Ensuite, Coromandel numéro 20, c'est Beaubassin, Petite-Rivière. Ensuite, à Pointe-aux-Sables, dans la circonscription numéro 1, là aussi, Finéna, un terrain inidentifié, mais il y a une difficulté parce que nous n'avons suffisamment d'espace pour construire pour aller de l'avant. Et Stephen Obigadou reconnaît que l'ancien gouvernement, travailliste, PMSD, je suis en présence de telles difficultés. Et peut-être une dernière chose, c'est que Stephen Obigadou montre les très ouverts. Et là, il invite le leader de l'opposition, vienne dans ce bureau, joigne-lui ailleurs, et même un député de l'opposition, donc pour lui mettre jouer quand sur table, explique en quelque sorte dans les détails et tout ça projet-là qui est besoin réalisé dans l'intérêt du pays. Et il fait très conciliant vis-à-vis du leader de l'opposition. Donc quand même, c'est une question qui fait une passe dans l'intérêt du pays.
Et dans le calme, en fait.
Et dans le calme, oui, dans le calme, sauf une petite intervention speaker qui fait une certaine question de Xavier Duval.
Ben voilà pour le compte-rendu de cette séance de la PNQ. Merci, Jagdish Joypal.
Merci, Priscilla. Ça a été donc un très bon exercice donc, ce matin pour démarrer et la séance de l'Assemblée. Et comme on dit un petit peu plus tôt, il y a encore les autres questions qu'il a. Le Premier ministre pour besoin répondre. Et les ministres pour répondre après à l'interpellation. Il y en a beaucoup, 78 questions au total. Et
20 adressées au Premier ministre.
20 adressées au Premier ministre. Et les projets de loi, le Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill, qui est très important parce que c'est un projet de loi qui intéresse, comme tous les projets de loi, qui intéresse toute la nation parce que c'est la consommation, c'est-à-dire la possession de drogue, pas dure, certainement, de certaines drogues ou la consommation personnelle. Donc, les peines, les sanctions deviennent moins sévères, puis aller vers la réhabilitation de jeunes toxicomanes ou de tout autre toxicomane une fois la loi votée. Donc, pas pour une poursuite directe par la Cour pour certaines personnes. Je perdis je droit, c'est-à-dire au niveau de ce certificat de moralité. Donc, c'est un projet de loi qui et le gouvernement et l'opposition il accueillir dans l'ensemble.
D'accord, violon. Alors, ben voilà, on est capable de suivre le débat à l'Assemblée nationale, nos pages défimedia.info et puis large extrait de la PNQ dans le journal de 13h qui est présenté par Douchila Mansing. À très bientôt.